Some people ask, how do you make that transition between the revolving tree stand and your first shelf? In this illustration, I'm going to walk through it real quickly and give you a visual so that you will understand the transition of going from the revolving tree stand to the first revolving village tree shelf, either using PVC materials or steel pipe materials. This is a special video just to show people, some people have asked, how do you make that connection from the revolving stand to your first shelf? And as part of the revolving village tree, this is the most trickiest part here. The first thing you need to do is purchase your revolving tree stand. Depending on the diameter, the stalk of your tree comes into different sizes, and sometimes you have these fittings here. So you can go from maybe a 3/4 inch to a 1 inch or to a 1 1/4 inch tree stalk, artificial tree stalk. The first thing to do is find out the largest diameter and come up with a mating PVC pipe that's going to fit there. Here I'm using, in this case, a 1 inch. If I tried a 3/4 inch, you see it's too small. You see how it rocks in there. So I'm trying to make it as large as possible. So here, this one fits a little bit better, but again, it still rocks here. And what I would do, I can do one of two things. I can put some wedges, and in this case I'm just using some wood wedges I made in here, and then just slip them in here. And make sure you get that on all four corners. Again, this is just a mock-up that I'm doing here, so just illustration. So once I got that in there, you can see it's pretty firm. It's not going to move, but to make sure it stays like that, what I would end up doing would either buy a large band clamp, mechanical band clamp, or take some high-strength tape, like in this case some Gorilla tape, and tape around real securely to make sure that those wedges stay in place so that it won't move. Now once you do that, I'll pull this out. The second thing is to find out the length of your PVC pipe, and that's defined by the elevation that you want to go from your stand to your first shelf. And just for illustration purposes, maybe I want my first shelf to be this height here, at your discretion. So just say, for example, I'm looking at from here to the bottom of my first shelf, roughly 4 inches. So if I put a mark here and add the 4 inches plus the dimensions here is 2 inches. So this PVC pipe is roughly 6 inches long. Again, it just drops in there. Snug it in a little bit firmly. You don't have to be a hard fasten because this comes out at the end of the season. And then add your first mounting cap. It goes on like that. And then following that would be your first shelf. Shelf that I'm going to use. This first shelf, let's look at it. It's going to have a top and a bottom mounting cap, and we're going to secure that to my first shelf using some screws, nuts, and lock washers. And just make sure you don't over tight and crack your PVC flange connection. So now you have your mounting caps at the bottom as well as at the top. Again, we're illustrating that this is going to be your first shelf. Part of your first shelf is that you got a hole here. This hole allows the rotating power feed from your revolving stand to come up and come through here. And this goes in like this. So now you have your first shelf. So from this point you just continue on with the rest of your shelves with the combination of mounting caps and PVC pipe. That is a simple installation of the transition from your rotating tree stand to your first shelf. In addition to doing it with PVC, you can also use steel flanges. Here we have a steel nipple, a steel, what they call a floor flange, and that goes the same way. Then you screw it a little bit just to make sure it snugs down. Now that's secure, and again we're just using steel pipe, galvanized or black pipe, plumber's pipe, what they call a floor flange. And the issue with that is that now your first shelf goes on top of this. Can either be another steel floor flange sitting on top here and going up, or you transition now back from steel back to PVC. The only issue with this is that you got different bolt hole patterns. Here you got 4 bolt hole patterns. The diameter of the bolt hole pattern is different from this bolt hole pattern here. So the way I would do that is I would mount my first shelf, find out the hole pattern, drill the holes in here, for example. I would drill the holes in here, and then I would come back in with my nut and just make sure it goes through like this. I would countersink this. I would countersink this hole to make sure that this bolt fits flat. And once I get all 4 bolts in there, it's snugged in, then I would come back in and find my pattern for my mounting cap and just drill those holes. So that allows me to, one, you will see that the steel flange is covering up the hole for the PVC pipe. I would install the PVC mounting cap first by doing this. Countersink this under here so it lays flat, bolt it down, and then I will come back in and drop this one down through here and bolt it for my steel flange. And word of caution, you want to make sure that that connection between the stand and that first PVC pipe or steel pipe is firm, because you don't want to get all of your villages and everything mounted on your shelves and that point becomes weak.